Good morning, Calvary. We'd like to say hello to you, to our podcast listeners who are listening online, the several hundred of you who listen every week. We're glad you're here. Welcome back from Easter. We hope you had a great time. If you were on the aisles, could you scoot maybe towards the middle? There's a few people who still need some spots in the middle. That'd be great. All right, if you're scoot towards the, yeah, you know what I'm saying. Scoot towards the middle so that we can make room on the aisles for people. Thank you. As we're moving into this series, we're doing a series called DNA. DNA, what's it about? Last week we had a great Easter service, counting children. We had over 1,000 people there last week, and I just want to give God the glory for that. But the reason we gather with those people, and the reason that's a number to celebrate, is because that represents people. People who need to know about Jesus, people who need to follow Jesus, and we're excited about as people come to see Christ, as we have several people who are being baptized at the 11:30 service today, as people come to know Christ, their life changes. And as their life changes, guess what? I believe their DNA somewhat changes. Now, not their literal DNA, but the DNA from the standpoint of what they are about, their correct characteristics, their heredity kind of things. So let me give you a little, I'm not a science guy, but I try to do some science research. So when I mess this up, someone will send me an email later this week telling me how I messed up. That's the way this usually works. And I'll go, I told you I wasn't a science guy, but I tried, okay? So here's what I would say. The DNA is the hereditary material in humans. Nearly every cell in your body has the same DNA. Do you realize that? Nearly every cell in your body has the same DNA. Now, human DNA consists of about 3 billion bases. 3 billion bases. But there are 4 basic kinds of bases that make up your DNA. So we're spending 4 weeks talking about our 4 bases that we're talking about. Now, here's the cool part, okay? 99% of the bases are the same in every human being. Think about that. 99% of your genetic DNA in your base is the same in every human being, which means that compared to the person sitting next to you, whether it's a male or a female, no matter whatever the race they are, background they are, we're all part of the human race, which means that we are 99% alike. It's only the 1% difference in your DNA that makes you distinctly unique. That's fascinating to me. So, as we go forward, what you understand is it is the property of DNA that can replicate or make copies of itself, which is also the truth for the church. Now, our goal for this series is simply this. If the DNA is what can replicate or make copies of itself, our goal over the next 4 weeks is to say that we are trying to make people who are growing and surviving, that they are duplicating themselves, and that they are developing into better followers of Christ. Just like the cells divide, we want you to know that how to survive, how to grow and thrive, and how to duplicate. And the way we're doing that is we're covering 4 basic topics, our basis, that we believe are the basis of every follower of Christ. And that is simply this. Here's the first one, that followers follow. Followers follow Jesus. Followers follow Jesus. You see, we're a church that believes that you shouldn't just follow me because I'm capable of mistakes. And if you follow me too closely, I will probably lead you off a cliff. I just will. Not literal cliff, right? Because that would be bad. But what I would tell you is that the role of the pastor is to point people to Jesus and to have you so closely follow Jesus that it changes who you are on the inside and out. So as we start this series, as we launch into this idea of followers follow, here's what I would challenge you to do. Follow Jesus. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of the word follow, I think of the game that I used to play as a little kid called Follow the Leader. Follow the Leader. And I remember I was kind of a little kid, as a little kid, I was kind of a grown-up. Does that make sense? I thought like an adult. And so I remember having this thought on the playground. I can tell you what the grass smelled like. It's one of those memory things I have. And our playground had one of those industrial concrete circle things that they use to bury all kind of, sewage or whatever. I don't know what they're for. But we had one. They would never be allowed on a modern playground. But back then it was like, this is free. This is fun. We can just jump up on these things and play King of the Mountain and shove each other off at recess. That's what you did at recess back then. And so I remember being in one of these scenes, and there was about 5 or 6 of us. And we were playing the game Follow the Leader. And I remember thinking in the middle of this game, I don't want to follow this guy because he's going to make me do something that's embarrassing or dangerous. I remember thinking that. And then I remember as a little kid thinking to myself, an adult little Daniel version, thinking to myself, why are you playing this game, you silly redhead, right? And I remember, I probably didn't think the silly redhead part, but I remember thinking, why are you playing this game? And I remember this thought came across my mind. You are playing for your turn to be the leader. Because I didn't really want to follow. I think most of us don't really like the idea of following. And when we ask ourselves, why don't we like to follow? It's because we aren't in control. And if we aren't in control, we might be forced to do something that is embarrassing to us, or we might be forced to do something that we don't want to do, or that is dangerous. So today, I would challenge that assumption with the reality that Jesus may ask you to do something dangerous. And Jesus may ask you to do something that you might find embarrassing. But I want to argue that it's still worth it all. So look with me in Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26. If you don't have a Bible, there should be one around you. You can always download the free Bible app on YouVersion. It's free on your smartphone or your tablet, both in the room and at home. Matthew chapter 16, verses 24 through 26 says this. Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, anytime you see the word disciple, that means learner or follower. So Jesus said to his learners, his followers, if anyone wants to come with me, he must deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me will find it. What will it benefit a man if he gains the whole world yet loses his life? Or what will a man give in exchange for his life? Cheery, right? Let's read verse 24 again. Then Jesus said to his followers, if anyone wants to come with me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Can you imagine how the disciples heard this? You see, the disciples heard this. If anyone wants to follow me, they must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. You got to think in that time that the cross was a symbol of crucifixion. And crucifixion at that day and time was not associated with what Jesus was about to do because he hadn't done it yet. The cross, the crucifixion, symbolizes a criminal. Not only did it symbolize a criminal, it symbolized someone who would die a death that was meant to embarrass. So they would scantily clothe them. It was supposed to last a long time. It was a form of torture. It was a way to say to the rest of the world, you don't want to do what this guy has done. You don't want to follow in his path, because if you follow in his path, this may be the worst thing that you can have in your life, and it may be done to you as well. That's why they crucified some people. They were saying, you don't want this. You really don't want to do what he did because you're going to end up like him. So Jesus is looking out and he's saying, you want to follow me? Great, pick up your cross and follow me. Wait a minute, Jesus, are you about to become a criminal? I can imagine the disciples were confused at this point. Because you see, when the disciples first became the disciples, when the followers of Jesus first became followers of Jesus, I don't think they had a clue what they were signing up for. Good news, I don't think many of us do either, right? And so we show up, and Jesus looks out at them, and he goes, I remember the fishermen. He goes out and he gathers the fishermen, right? They're out casting their nets. They're out trying to raise a profit. And Jesus walks up to these men who were practicing likely the trade of their fathers, who their only hope of escaping the trade of their fathers was to have an encounter like they had with Jesus. And Jesus says, hey, drop your nets and come follow me. Now let's put this in modern context. Would you follow Jesus if he did that? Let's say Jesus in human form walked in this room today. And let's say in human form he walks up on the stage and he says, Daniel, may I speak? And I'll say, I don't know. I don't normally let people interrupt the speaking. Can I see a photo ID? Right? And so I verify the photo ID. It's actually Jesus Christ. And so I realize, well, he's God. I'm not. I should probably sit down and let him talk. And so I do that. And he comes up and he says, okay, everybody, if you want to be my follower, I want you to get up out of your seats right now, go to the car, get in your car, and be willing to follow me. I'm about to get on Interstate 65. And some of you are sitting there thinking, I don't know what I would do in that moment. Right, because neither did the disciples, but they chose to follow. And so you might go, Jesus, where are we going, north or south? Just follow me. Jesus, where are we going? What's the destination? You don't seem to understand. The destination is to follow me. Trust me, it will be worth it. But in our world, in our reality, we sit there and we go, I don't know that I want to do that. And part of the reason that we don't really want to do that is because we think we're entitled to so much more than we are. We think we're entitled to say, okay, I know where my life should go, and I'm going to get it there, and if God can help me along the way, then that's great. We have this idea of entitlement. And so when Jesus begins this story and this challenge of saying, will you follow me? He begins it with this saying, you must deny yourself. Deny. What do we mean by deny? We mean you shouldn't do something. And a lot of times when we think of the word deny, right, we think, okay, I shouldn't sin. I should deny my impulse to sin. But I think there's something more to this word deny than just don't sin. Sin is when you fall short of what God's intentions for your life are. In other words, don't lie, right? Okay, so I'm going to deny the impulse in me to say I'm going to lie. Why? Because it's bad for me, right? But there's also, Jesus asked you to deny yourself, not just so that you wouldn't sin, but so that your life wouldn't be about you. It wouldn't be about you. Let me put it to you this way. This morning I was going through McDonald's about 6 a.m. I do that every Sunday. You can judge me later. I don't go to McDonald's that much, but I do like a good sausage McMuffin from McDonald's on Sunday mornings with a large Coke Zero with light ice, please. And what I've learned is about 1 out of every 3 times when I go through McDonald's, I order a sausage McMuffin, a large Coke Zero with light ice, please. I go through the line, and I learn to test the Coke because a lot of times they miss the zero part, and it's regular Coke, and it's just syrupy because I'm used to Coke Zero. I like Coke Zero. And so I'll dump it out. I'll go inside. I don't even get annoyed with that anymore. This morning, driving through the drive-thru, taste the Coke Zero. It's Coke Zero. Good. Going to be a good day. Go up into my office, open up my sausage McMuffin, and find that it's not exactly a sausage McMuffin. You see, normally a sausage McMuffin looks like this. It is a sausage English muffin. It's an English muffin bottom. And then there is a layer of cheese, obviously processed. It's not real cheese. You can tell by looking at it, but that's okay. It tastes really good. And then there's a sausage patty. We hope it's pork. And then on top of that is the top of the English muffin, right? So that's what I was expecting. I opened this up, and this is my 340 calorie splurge I do once a week on Sunday mornings to get me protein through 4 sermons, and it's really important to me. And I open it up, and I look at it, and I go, huh. And see, this morning when I looked at this sausage McMuffin, I saw the bottom of the English muffin. Very good. I then saw the semblance of cheese, the processed cheese form. I then saw the sausage, and I'm thinking, this is the contents of a sausage McMuffin. But instead of the top of the English muffin, there was an egg white. Like, there was no top. There was no top of the English muffin. There was just an egg white. And at first I thought this was funny, and I thought I should Instagram this or post this on social media. That's what people do when in fast food. Like you had one job. You've all seen those slogans. And I'm sitting there thinking, who confuses the top of an English muffin with an egg white? I mean, one is soft, and it's obviously not real egg white. It's jelly. It's almost like Jell-O form. And so that's why I don't eat it, because it's perfectly round. First of all, that's not normal. I know the cheese isn't normal, and I'm okay with that, but the egg white thing just messes with my mind. And so but who confuses that? And so then at first I start to laugh and think this is kind of funny, but then you know what ends up happening? I start getting kind of mad. This is this morning. And I start getting kind of mad because I'm doing the whole, you had one job. I mean, seriously, you had to slap it on. They don't just carefully with tongs. I know the guy's wearing gloves, and he's slapping on there, and who grabs the Jell-O and thinks, oh, this guy doesn't want the top of his McMuffin, he wants the egg white instead. And I sit there thinking, I paid for all 340 of those calories, and I'm getting robbed of whatever the amount of calories are on the top of this sausage McMuffin. And that's the best part, because when your teeth crack it and the texture just melts on the top of your mouth, and I'm sitting here thinking, I was robbed. I was denied what I ordered, right? And so what we do a lot of times is we go around the world and we tell the world how we're denied. And when we post those on social media, what do we really do? We post this, and then we put a hashtag in, and the hashtag always says this: first world problems. First world problems. If you aren't familiar with first world problems are the realization that we should be thankful that we have food. It's our way to vent when we really shouldn't vent. It's our diary to the world. It's our, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I know that there are people in many countries who would kill to have that egg white, but I'm bothered by it, so it's hashtag first world problems, And so we know that somewhere deep inside it is wrong for us to complain, but we just can't help ourselves, so we complain through social media. And the way we lighten our mood is by putting up this hashtag first world problems, like, no big deal, I have a bigger perspective in mind, when inside you're really furious. You know? And the reason that we do this is because we've been denied what we want. You see, I think that's the point of this. When we say deny, it means denying your entitlement to realize that this world is not about you. So often we make it about us. So often we struggle with that. And so often we sit there and we delve into this idea and we delve into this reality and we sit there and we fight. I want what I want. She didn't treat me right. He didn't treat me right. This church didn't treat me right. So I'm going to go find another. That fast food restaurant messed up my food. I'm never eating there again. That friend, boy, they gossiped about me, no longer my friend. And we sit there and we think, and all of this is a result of people denying you what you think that you are entitled to receive. But the reality is, if you got what you really received, it would be eternal separation from God. Jesus asks us to deny ourselves because it's the realization that this life is not about you. And when strange thing happens, when you start to realize that your life is not about you, then it changes your reality. The next thing he asks us to do is to take up our cross. That sounds very similar to denying ourselves, but here's the difference, okay? One of the things around here I've said all along is if you want to quit sinning, if there's something you're struggling with, if you want to quit smoking or anything like that, in order to quit something, you have to find the opposite good. In other words, I've said this, you can't just stop lying, you must tell the truth. So the equivalent of this looking forward is this. To deny ourselves is like to stop doing something. But to carry the burden, good news for you, it doesn't necessarily mean carry the cross. It doesn't necessarily mean we're all going to die on a cross. Okay? Everybody go, whew. Okay, good. I thought a little more audible, but some of you played along. Thanks. And so this idea of, okay, we aren't all going to die. It doesn't mean that ISIS is going to come in and take over the country and we're going to have to watch a gruesome death. What it does mean is that you have an obligation to do your part in following Christ. In order to follow Christ, if Christ were to come up here and stand on the stage and say, get in the car and follow me, in order to follow Christ, guess what you'd have to do? Get in your car to follow him. It wouldn't be enough to just sit there and go, well, I showed up in church, I'm denying myself. Oh, everybody's gone. Where did they go? You have to actually do something. You have to take up the cross. You have to take up the burden and be willing to go wherever God leads. We don't like to do that because what we like to do in our society is come up with the easiest possible way that we can trick God into thinking that we are actually doing something. Let me give you another example that really isn't about God, but I'm going to apply it to it, okay? In order to do something, there's a lot of people who try to do noble causes and noble things. And one of the things that people do when they're raising money is they look around and they go, how do people raise money? And then they think, how can we raise money? So there was a charity in Philadelphia that asked themselves this question: how can we raise money for our charity? And in doing so, they asked themselves the questions. They looked around and they thought, one good way to raise money is to hold a run. We actually do that here. We're in 2 weeks, we're doing the International Justice Mission Run. We encourage you to participate. All the money that we raise goes towards helping free people who are enslaved around the world. And that's what the IJM Run is. So they thought to themselves, we need to do a run. One problem, these people didn't like to run. But they knew that the run was a good way to raise money. So instead, they created, in Philadelphia, it happened 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, in February, however long ago it was, 2 months ago. They started the first annual Philly 0.0 run. Not 0.1, 0.0. And here's what they said. This is a race started as a way to bring runners and non-runners alike in the middle of winter to enjoy the best part of any running event, the post-race activities. So each participant received a t-shirt, a numbered bib, an entry ticket, as well as post-race prizes. They gave out door prizes and prizes for every level for age graph. Now here's the problem. They gave out prizes for everybody who finished in first place. They actually hired a person, one of the people to time people, and they had them sitting there. And what they did is they had everybody line up on the start line, and the tape was literally right here. And so they started On the mark, get set, go. They were done. So if you look at the actual race results, which are posted online, you can go there and you can find in the 20-year-old category, the winner was a man who finished the race in 0.01 seconds. True story. And the women division, the winner of that bracket won the race in 0.01 seconds. And you can go to the 50-year-old male bracket, and the winner of that race finished the race in 0.01 seconds. And if you trace the race down, the person who finished in last place in every category finished the race in 0.01 seconds. They never ran the race. Why did they do this? Because it was called the instant gratification run. People who don't want to run the race but just receive the prize for the race itself. This is what we do a lot of times as followers of Christ. I don't want to run the race. I just want the post-race celebration. I want to go to heaven. I want to worship God. I want to receive the glory. Streets of Gold sounds awesome. Sign me up. I've heard there's a big feast. I don't think there's actually food in heaven, but you can think that, I've heard all this. I've heard that you're going to get whatever you want. Sign me up. But you want me to run the race? Yeah, I don't want to do that. And what Jesus is saying here is what you have to understand in order to actually complete the game and complete the prize, complete the competition, which isn't really a competition. In order to be my follower, you must deny yourself and run the race. Carry the burden. Go through whatever life comes your way, glorifying God. Now, here's the part where it gets hard. When we look at this, people come to church and they go, okay, why should I follow God? Why should I do this? And there's 4 types of people, I think, that simply come to God, that show up here week after week. And here are the 4 types of people. When you first start coming back to church, in other words, I've been a pastor for like 3 years now and 2.5 years, whatever. And then I've been in ministry a long time. When people first start coming back to church, not if they're new to town, but when they first start coming to church, I inevitably hear one of these 4 things, the reason they start coming back. 1, money problems. That is kind of weird to some of us, but they're having money problems, so they go to church thinking the church can figure it out for them. 2, relationship problems. They're having problems in their marriage, they're having problems with their kids, they're having problems even in a work, they're having problems with people, getting along with people, and they think, well, maybe God can help. 3, a death event. There's somebody in their life who's either died, someone has cancer, someone is struggling in their faith, and so they sit there and think about their priorities, and they sit there and they think, okay, I need to find out what's going on, so they struggle with this, and they come to the realization, maybe there's something else out there, and so they come back to church. 4th one, this one seems not to make sense with the other 3, but it does make perfectly good sense. Cultural guilt. What do I mean by cultural guilt? Cultural guilt is the place where you realize, I know that there's probably a God, and I know God wants me to do something, and so I'm going to come sit in a chair on Sunday mornings. I'm going to throw a 20 in the offering plate and hope that's good enough. Cultural guilt. And so that if I sit there and I go, I entered that race. I ran my .001, and then that attempts to satisfy our thing. Now, when you come into this reality, what you understand is you don't necessarily understand what it means to follow God. Because just by stepping into the church and sitting in a chair doesn't mean that you're a follower of Christ. In fact, you could do that every week for your entire life, and it doesn't make you a follower of God. You know what actually makes you a follower of God? Following God. And so when God asks you to deny yourself and take up your cross and follow him, it's not show up at church and act like you're following him. It's follow him. So here's my challenge for you this week. Follow him. And a good way to start following him is simply doing that. I want to give you a very, very simple challenge, and some of you are going to love it, and some of you are going to go, no, don't do that to me, okay? And you have the right not to do it. Absolutely, you have the right not to do it. You can deny my denial. I understand now. You know how that works. Deny what I'm. But here's what I would encourage you. If you really want to become a follower of Christ, learn to humble yourself by denying yourself. So every day this week, here's the challenge. Every day, start making this a part of your DNA, part of who you are, a part of who you are. Do one thing a day. Don't do one thing a day that you want to do. I want to eat a second cookie. Nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to deny myself that second cookie to prove to me that my impulses and my instincts aren't in charge of my life. don't watch that TV show that you know you shouldn't watch, right? I'm not going to do that because I'm going to prove to myself that my impulses aren't in control of my life. You come to the place in your life where there's one thing, there's one identifiable moment every day where there's something in your heart that says, I want to do this, and don't do it. Don't eat something. Don't go out and do this. Don't buy the pair of shoes. Sorry, ladies. Don't do this kind of thing. Deny yourself once a day of something that you want to do. Maybe it's a sin, maybe it's not a sin, but something that you want to do and say, no, I will not be controlled by my impulses, but God's will. The second thing, take up your cross. A simple way to learn the habit, the discipline of taking up your cross, in other words, following Christ, is to make yourself do something that you don't want to do. In other words, the proverbial eat your carrot. Whether that's literal for you or just the proverbial eat your carrot, there's something in your day that you're sitting there going, I don't want to do, but I'm going to do anyways. Maybe it's simple as, I don't want to come to church today, so you don't come. That's been your habit and your MO. I come to church when I feel like coming to church, and I don't come to church when I don't feel like coming to church. Maybe simple thing is say, I'm going to come to church no matter what. I'm going to make myself come to church even when I don't want to. Maybe it's, I'm going to exercise for the first time in forever. But I don't want to exercise. Right. No one really does unless you get in the habit of exercising and see the benefit of it. But start exercising. Maybe it's treating your spouse with a different way. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is. But whatever you don't want to do, make yourself do something that you don't want to do so that you can gear your life into realizing that your life is not about you. It's not. It's about Christ. And that might be so simple. And some of you are sitting there thinking, how will that change my life? It will. It will, I promise you. And you don't make promises from the stage unless you're supposed to really mean them. It will, because when you begin to gear your life towards other people, what ends up happening is you become a better person. Look with me in verse 25. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life because of me will find it. In other words, whoever lives their life for the way that they want it to be lived, whoever lives their life to the entitlement of I deserve, I should be, I get, I want, then you're going to lose it. Because the old adage of whoever dies with the most toys wins is actually very wrong. It is. But when you lose your life and you realize that your life isn't geared towards you and you live your life in accordance with saying, okay, God, I'm not going to live just for myself. I'm going to deny what I want and live for the benefit of others. I'm going to do stuff that benefits others, not just for myself. And so you go do things like Servanthood Saturday. You go do things like the 5K run. You go volunteer to help teach VBS. You show up on Sunday and you volunteer here. You take cookies to your neighbor. You begin to go on mission trips to Belize or Honduras. You begin to see the world as God sees the world, which isn't about you, but rather bringing people to, in accordance to following Christ, bringing people along line to understanding that this life is better when we're all in relationship together in the pursuit of knowing what it means to be a follower of Christ. When you begin to understand that this life isn't about you, but rather the glorifying of God's name, everything changes and you begin to find it. Now, I want to go back to that list I shared with you earlier. The people who come in, and maybe you're coming back after Easter, and maybe you're sitting there going, okay, I'm that person who's struggling with money problems or relationship problems, or there's a death in my reality that's shaking my world, or I'm just here culturally because I feel like I'm supposed to be and to make my guilt go away. And what I would say to you is, if you're sitting there feeling guilty about this stuff, don't. Because you see, when we all began following Christ, we all started at the same place. Right there. It's natural when you approach relationships, unless you really understand and you're really mature in your relationships, and really, I think without knowing Jesus, you approach relationships from the beginning point of what can you get out of it. Think about it. When you started dating your spouse, did you really sit there and think, if you're those of you who are married, did you sit there and think, boy, what can I give him or her? That wasn't what you were thinking. You're thinking, what do they have to offer me? Do I like this person? Do I? When you make friends at school, or whenever you are in life, do you sit there and you think, boy, how can I be a friend to that person from a non-Christian perspective, right? The way most of us practice friendships. Can I make a friend with this person and help them see how great I am? Or, you typically approach all your relationships with, how can this person benefit me? We join churches for this. How can this church help me. When Jesus teaches us to deny ourselves, to lose our life, and what happens is you begin to say, okay, I no longer am in this life. I'm no longer trying to make relationships. I no longer am trying to live my life for what people can give me, but instead what I can give them is Jesus. Somewhere along the line in following Jesus, here's my prayer for you, that as you follow Jesus and as you draw closer to him and as you are brought into his presence, somewhere along the line, you switch from this idea of what can Jesus give me to an understanding that what I can give Jesus is all that I should live for. I don't think it comes overnight for most people. I think there's this development, this maturing of our faith. And hear me, I have not yet arrived myself. In fact, I don't expect to arrive in this life. But what I can tell you is the more I'm drawn into God's presence, the more I lose myself in who he was, the more I sit there and I go, I no longer want to live for me, the more I find life. Because the more I find him, the more I find life. Because what happens is I draw in myself closer to Christ. Christ's character begins to rub off on me. And I become more of a godly man. And guess what happens then? My wife has a better husband. My kids have a better father. This church has a better pastor. In those moments where I'm really saying, okay, God, I want to be more like you and more of your characteristics, instead of trying to do things in accordance to my will and trying to manipulate you and use you and try to get all I can get out of you, I become the person who says, listen, it's not about me, but I want you to seek after and understand what it means to be a follower of Christ. You benefit when I sit there and I go, God, I want my life to reflect you. And as I become a person who reflects God to the world, what ends up happening is I find life because all of a sudden my church tends to run better. Why? Because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. My marriage gets better. Why? Because I'm no longer looking at her as someone who's there simply to give me what I deserve. My kids start acting better because I'm no longer trying to use them to sit there and get glory to my name. I'm no longer the person who has friendships that are really shallow and only about what I want out of them. But as I become more and more like Christ, what ends up happening is I deny myself more and more, and he becomes more and more active and more alive in my life. And as I become this, I find my life and I find purpose and I find meanings because all my relationships start to come together better. They start to reflect the image of God. I find hope there. I find joy there. I find peace there. And other people begin to see this too, and they become aware that this life is something else that they need to understand. And so what ends up happening is they sit there and they go, naturally, I want that. So then they start following us for what can I get out of it. And I could sit there at that moment and I could sit there and I go, how dare you follow God for what you can get out of it? Or I can say, that's okay for where you are right now. But I want you to understand the more you follow Christ, the more you grow in your relationship, the more you begin to build up in him, the more you begin to deny yourself and take on his characteristics and who he wants you to be, the more you become like the man or the woman that God has made you to be, the happier you will be, because whoever finds his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life will find it. You see, most of us come to God sitting there going, God, what can I get? And what we actually get is Jesus. And when we understand Jesus, everything else melts away. Look in verse 26 with me. For what does it benefit a man if he gains the whole world, yet loses his life? Or what will a man give in exchange for his life? Are you living your life for you? For the 401k? Are you living your life for the fame and the accolades? Are you living your life for the wife or the husband and the 2.2 kids and the white picket fence and the American dream? You can live your life for that, but what you're going to find is the American dream is a false reality of what you were made to live. You were made to live in a relationship with Jesus. So simple challenge today. Short message this week. If you're a follower of Christ, here's what I would challenge you to do. Learn to deny yourself and carry your cross. Simple. This week, challenge yourself once a day. Do something that you don't want to do and don't do something that you do want to do. Simple. And say, God, as you're doing these moments, make you more evident in my life so that you can help other people follow Christ. If you're a follower, if you don't think you're a follower of Christ, here's my challenge for you today. Realize that where you are, God does love you for you. And it's okay to onboard. It's okay to say, I'm going to start following Christ for what I'm going to get out of it. I do think that. Because what you're going to get out of it is hope and joy and peace. And what I would encourage you is just start the journey. Start the journey. And what you're going to find is the more you deny yourself, the more that God is with you, the more you're going to find peace and happiness. And I hope and I pray that God continues to reveal himself more and more as you go along the line. The Bible says if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe that he was raised from the dead, then you can be saved. So that means that if you realize that Christ died on the cross for you, that he didn't think selfishly for himself, he didn't think about what he's entitled, because he was entitled to forever in heaven sitting next to the Father. But he came down on this earth and humbled himself and denied what he was entitled and denied what he was right and did what he didn't want to do so that you might have a relationship with him. If you give your life to him and begin to understand how this unfolds in your life, then you can become a new person, a new man or a new woman, and you will find dignity like you've never imagined. It's afforded to you. And what I would encourage you to do is, if you're in a place where you're ready and you're close, take out your Connect card. There's a spot there that write your name down, give us a legible email address so we can get back in touch with you, or a phone number we can call you. And let us talk and have the dialogue. We're not going to push you. We want to walk beside you, because hear me, we're not about building followers of Calvary, but followers of Jesus. In fact, if you come to Christ and you say, I'm going to go join another church, I'll write a letter to that pastor for you. Say, this is a great person. They want to get plugged in your church. Because it's not about this place, but his name and his glory and his renown. So today, simple, would you take up your cross and follow him? Because followers follow. It is the DNA of who we are. It is what we should be about. And without it, we are not really a follower of Christ. Without this characteristic in our life, without this characteristic in our very DNA, we are not followers. We're just people here in a church building fooling ourselves. God, may you be exalted and lifted up today. We are thankful for who you are. And God, we are thankful for the luxuries that we have in this country, but we pray that they don't hinder us or keep us from understanding what it means to follow you. So God, we ask that you help us to see you in a new way today. That wherever you would lead us down the road, we would journey with you. And we may not know the destination on this life, but we know that it's coming, and that destination is eternity with you in heaven. To where our soul rests with you, our physical body may lay in the ground, but our hearts and our minds, God, can go with you forever, exalting your name, lifting your name, and where we will find peace and hope is there. So God, help us to journey to that end. When we fall down, pick us back up. When we make mistakes, draw us into you. Together as a group of misfits gathered together to draw closer to you and to each other, God, I pray that you are the King and you are the reason that we are here. The name above Jesus, who gave himself selflessly, denied himself on a cross, carried our burden on the cross, and was resurrected and is alive and is here today. You are the one who is eternal, Lord, King. God, you are the Alpha, the Omega, our protector, provider, sustainer, and friend. Healer, omniscient one, holy one, righteous one. God, you are our ally. So God, we are thankful for all that you've done for us. The name of Jesus that is to be exalted, who gave himself as an example, we pray.